Hello and welcome to Fin Business. Today we are in conversation with Raviraj Doshi from Smokescreen. Ravi, welcome on the show.
Thank you.
Uh, what I would like to understand from you, Ravi, is most of the banks are hacked today. They are strengthening their systems, but the reality is every minute more than 1,000 accounts are hacked globally. I would like to understand how hackers hack the banks, how hackers actually hack the financial institutions.
So, how are the hackers actually breaching the security, right? The number one way that the hackers are coming and doing the major transaction frauds are by actually entering into the bank's systems.
Right.
Now, there are two ways to enter into banks' internal systems. One is that they can come directly from anything that's connected to the internet. That could be anything which is a mobile banking or a net banking website or your corporate website, or someone actually social engineers and spearfishes employees, and they get onto the employees' machine. So they come inside your network by hacking into a few employee machines. So now they're inside your network.
Right.
So once they are inside your network, the hackers actually can't just transact and transfer 100 crores because they've just got entry. Right? So now they have to figure out where are the important systems, the ATM switches, the Swift servers, the core banking systems, the card databases, where are all those things? So they have to do what we call as enumeration within the network. So they actually have to find out where are those systems, and not only that, they have to also find out who are the people who are administering those systems, because the hackers need to get onto their machines.
Yes.
Because the ones who are the administrators are the ones who have direct access to those systems. So all of these activities that the hacker has to do, they have to move around your network a lot, right? So what we do is we actually create honeypots or decoys of these real systems, and they can also be administrator machines, they can be server systems, they can be Swift, they can be dummy ATM switches. So we create decoys or honeypots which are fake systems, and we place them all over the internal network. Now when the hacker comes inside and he looks for these systems, he discovers our honeypots and he tries to connect with them. Now our honeypots are never supposed to be touched, they are never supposed to be interacted with, they are just there as decoys.
Right.
The second anybody touches our honeypots, we instantly raise a silent alarm and we are able to detect the hackers. The problem today is that the hackers come inside our networks and they can remain undetected until they actually cause the losses that happens. When the losses start happening, that's when we figure out that, oh, we got hacked. But you were actually hacked many months before when the hacker actually entered your network. And that is something which is a problem. You're not able to detect the hacker until it's too late. So these honeypots in your environment can detect the hacker in the very early stages. And then you can take response actions and kick the hacker out before it's too late.
So good information. So my immediate question here is now, how do you actually deploy honeypots and decoys, and how actually the system works?
There is an appliance. You place the appliance within your data center, and that appliance creates these honeypot systems in your network. So you provide it IP addresses and connectivity, and it basically creates these honeypots automatically, or they can also be customized as well, so that it looks like your real systems internally, and they are placed all over. Now these honeypots are not only of servers and systems, they can be honeypot files. Right? There can be a file called password.xls, and it can be kept on somebody's machine. It can be kept on all the IT administrators' machines, and there can be other types of files which are also called decoy files. So the real people know that they are never supposed to touch this file, but a hacker doesn't know that. So if he comes across a file called passwords and he tries to open or copy them, we instantly raise an alarm. So these are the ways that you can actually place honeypots in your network. You place an appliance inside your network, and the appliance actually deploys the honeypots. These are all virtual. So none of the honeypot systems which we create are actually physical. So it all runs out of a single appliance.
If I ask you something about user case studies, you must have deployed these honeypots and decoys to multiple banks and financial institutions. Could you just give me some user case study? Could you just tell me how has been the result? How has been the experience?
So one of our first deployments was for a large private bank. And the second we placed our appliance in their network and we created a few honeypots, we started getting hits. And this was literally our first deployment. And there were like so many hits which were coming from different places within the bank's network that it was very alarming that how can it be that so many systems are compromised, right? And we started thinking maybe there is a bug, because it can't be that so many systems are hitting our honeypots. Right. And when the bank examined those sources of those hits which were coming onto the honeypots, they saw that they were infected ATMs within the bank's network. And the further investigation showed that the outsourced vendor was using an infected update file to actually update the ATM. So it was all the ATMs that they updated got infected with the virus. And the virus was then starting to spread inside the bank's network, and it was starting to hit the honeypots. So these are some of the use cases that we have. There are more where we actually place these decoy files on senior management machines, on IT people's machines. So one day we got a hit on one of the files. So we get an alert if somebody opens or copies any of our decoy files, which are placed on real machines. So one of the senior people within the organization, on his machine, a file decoy was triggered.
Okay.
So the protocol says that whenever you get a file decoy hit, you call the person on whose machine it was placed and you ask him, sir, did you accidentally open this file? It is a decoy file. Did you open it yourself? So we did that, and the gentleman said, no, I have not accessed any files. In fact, my computer is with the FMS engineer. He's doing some updates.
Oh.
So then we went and investigated. That person was copying all the important information from the gentleman's machine and trying to siphon it off.
Okay.
So this was something which is a use case which we call it as an insider threat use case, where somebody who's trying to copy things which they're not supposed to can also be detected, not just hackers.
How accurate your detection is and how strong the output or the result is?
Honeypots, once they are deployed and customized properly, are highly accurate, because it's a black or white, right? Nobody's supposed to touch my honeypot. Anybody who's touching my honeypot is doing something which is suspicious or malicious.
True.
It cannot be that, somebody is just loitering around the network and trying to connect to systems which they are not supposed to. It's not allowed, right? So even if a real user is doing something, the bank would want to know why is the user scanning the network. So I would say they are highly accurate. Because of the fact that they are agnostic to any kind of signatures. They can also detect zero-day attacks.
True.
So that's why they are highly effective. In fact, one of the USPs is that you get almost no false positives or very few false positives in a properly implemented solution.
So what is your experience when you actually look at the BFSI companies, specifically banks and finance companies, in an ethical hacking way? What actually goes wrong in that system? What is your assessment of ethical hacking when you actually do any consultation with a bank or something, some financial institutions?
Sure. So we've done, I would say, breach readiness assessments is what we would call them. We actually assess whether an organization is ready for a real hacking attack. So we actually use the same tools and techniques that a real hacker would use to actually see and show the bank how far can a real hacker get into their network. So one of the things that we stress upon when we do the ethical hacking or breach readiness assessment for the banks is, don't only focus on prevention and protection, focus on detection and response.
Right.
So we say that when we are doing this assessment for you, see if your systems are able to detect us, because that is the most important thing. Because tomorrow there'll be a 0-day, we'll be able to bypass your antivirus, but what happens next? Are you able to catch us when we use some techniques which your antivirus cannot detect,
right,
or your firewall cannot prevent, or your proxy cannot stop? So these are the ways that we do ethical hacking assessments. Earlier, when we did it a couple of years ago, most of the top banks were also quite vulnerable. Because they were not able to detect the hackers' activities. They did not have certain new age technologies implemented within their environment. And that's when the RBI CyberSOC framework came out, which talked about a lot of enhancements of existing systems and implementing certain new technologies as well, which the top banks have taken up very fast. So now when we go ahead and do the assessments, we see much better results, at least in the top half of the BFSI side.
So what is the way out for the BFSI companies? Is it like to hire an ethical hacker is the only way?
I don't think so. So there are a lot of outsourced services as well which are available. There are new age technologies that they need to implement. They need to rely on very good partners who will suggest and who will help them out.
So again, you already explained that what actually goes wrong with most of the banks. But if you have analyzed many banks and you have done lots of analysis, how vulnerable the banks are even today? Are they adopting the higher or advanced applications, or they're still okay with the whatever the applications they have and they feel that okay, they're secured? What is your observation?
So as I said, the top 10 banks, they are adopting all the latest techniques and they are keeping up with the hacker, right? The lower end of the banking list, certain public sector banks or even lower cooperative banks, etc., they are lagging behind. They are relying only on the compliance audits, which are not up to date, right? So if you look at all the banks that have been hacked, they were all PCI DSS compliant, right? So it just shows that the compliance requirements have not kept up to date with the latest techniques. So this is something which is alarming, because what the hackers have started doing is that they are now finding the lowest hanging fruit. They know that the top banks are securing themselves very, very well. They have very large teams of dedicated security guys. They are actually hiring the ethical hackers, right? But the lower end of the list is actually quite vulnerable. They are only relying on very basic controls.
Right.
And the recent Cosmos Bank hack was an example that the hackers don't care. They are going to go for the banks or the organizations that have the least security. So this is kind of alarming, because unless they get up to speed and they get all the same levels of protections like the top banks have, it's going to be a big problem, because you have over 1,000 cooperative banks which are basically with very basic controls.
So yes, you gave an example of Cosmos Bank, and we do understand, that was a big fraud. But since you said that small banks and cooperative banks are more vulnerable now because they don't have the high-end system, what kind of system or what kind of policies these banks should adopt to upgrade themselves, to strengthen their securities?
So one of the things is definitely they should have a security operations center. I believe most of them don't. So that is something that they should put in place. And to make that security operations center more effective, they need to place certain new age technologies, right? One of them being honeypots, which is also recommended by RBI as well. There are certain other technologies which they can use. In fact, there are techniques and services that they can actually adopt, which are called threat hunting. So which actually hires a group of I would say ethical hackers who actually go and proactively look at your network to see if it has been breached. Right. So, and I would say that they should focus more on detection and response of any fraudulent activities. Just as much effort which goes, or I would say spending that goes on preventing or protecting, you should put the same amount of effort on detection and response.
It was nice talking to you, Ravi. Those were really great insights. Thank you so much for sharing those insights.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for watching.